Hello team, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, and today we're going to discuss about CISA Exam Review Domain 5 Protection of Information Asset. I already made one video on Domain 1 Part 1 and Part 2 and I got a great response on that video. And based on that I thought let's continue the series of that session, and that is why I started with the Domain 5 first, because lot of CISA aspirants are a bit struggling with the Domain 5. So with that state of mind I'm making this video. If you're new to this channel, do subscribe and click on the bell icon so you should not miss any of my videos. And my name is Prabh Nair. For more information, you can refer my LinkedIn profile. So let's start with the first part. Okay, the first part in this video, in this particular session or in the Domain 5, we have Information Asset Security Framework Standard and Guideline. See, when you're talking about industries, okay, many industries, they basically use standards, they use frameworks, to build some kind of controls and governance in the organization. One example, we have a PCI DSS, which is used as a standard for all organizations to process the payment cards. And so this is the example of industry standard, but compliance is not required by the law because it is just used to achieve the defined objectives. Then we have some standards are found in many industries, including healthcare, accounting, audits, and telecommunication. In some industries, such as electrical power, regulations require compliance with a standard. And to meet the requirement of a standard, framework is often used to describe how the organization can achieve the compliance. Let's take one example. If we talk about one scenario here, every organization always start with the strategy. They create a strategy. Okay, strategy is called as a long-term plan. And then that strategy is further split into the tactical plan. And then we have an operational plan. Now, when you're talking about this strategy was created to meet the GDPR requirement. GDPR is a data privacy regulation EU. Now I have a company in Kerala and they need to comply with the GDPR definitely, because we have some employees. We have some employees here who residing in Kerala and they're trying to access the data which is based out in EU. And definitely if you're trying to access the data of EU, you need to comply with GDPR. So that for clear the GDPR we need in the system. But the question is that what controls we required by which we can able to comply with the GDPR. So first thing what we did, we introduced the framework. In Hindi, it is called Dhacha. In English, it is called as a structure, which talk about the necessary practice and procedures which required to achieve the defined objective. Here, I want a privacy system by which I can basically compliance my people, process, technology with GDPR. So I want a privacy management system. So we found some frameworks for the privacy management systems, and they basically have a process and practices. So one of their process and practice, they say that, okay, every system required to be protected with the password. So they give me one kind of freedom that, okay, I want a password in the system. But now the question is that, should I go for a specific practice and process which is given as per the framework, or should I go for any kind of a industry standard for a benchmark? And there we basically introduce the standard. Now, as per the ISO 27001, they say that system must be protected with the password with the 8 character. So this is something is a matrix we introduced. So that is why we say first we introduce a framework which help me to build the structure. Same like when you building a house, you first design the house. Here I need a balcony. Here we need a first floor, here we need a second floor, here we need a third, sorry, we need a first room, second room, third room, and then we decide we need a bed in each room. So this is as per the design. But what is the standard bed? What is the standard sofa? What is the standard door we required? So we used to say that it should be ISO 9001, or they have their own standard. So standard was basically introduced to measure the effectiveness. Standard were basically introduced to set the benchmark. So whenever we're building any kind of a system in the organization, first we adopt the framework. The framework comes with the practice and procedures, and to enhance that practice and procedure, then we can go for the specialization standard. In this example, I want to comply with GDPR. I want a privacy system in the organization. So I adopted one of the privacy framework. Now in that privacy framework, one of the practice and procedure is must have a password. Now I have a two choice. I can create my own password, which can be used because framework can be modified as per your business objective. But if you basically adopt the standard, because ISO claim you must have a 8-character password. So 8 character is a strong password. And tomorrow, when I claimed in the industry that yes, I am ISO 27001 certified because I am following their particular standard. Same like CISA, you are pursuing just for knowledge, that is a framework. But in CISA, you need to read those stuff also, which is not relevant to your profile, but that is required for the exam, because tomorrow you're going to use CISA as a name standard in your CV. So that is why in the domain 5, the most important element, you need to know the frameworks. So that is why in the domain 5 itself, starting with the auditing the information security management framework, and ultimate goal of a information security management framework is to reduce the risk to an acceptable level. So we have a NIST framework which talk about the best practice, how to achieve the cybersecurity or how to achieve the information security in the organization. Let me show you the document, how it look like. So this is the document we have for the NIST. If you can see that they have organized the entire process into some categories, like identify is there, where they're talking about we need a governance, and what is required in the governance, they talk about these are the practices. And if you want to set any kind of a benchmark against something you need to claim, we have a respective controls also. Okay, so you can see here. Then if I zoom it, now if I join one company and where I want a information security as a system I want to introduce, so I can refer this NIST framework. Based on my knowledge, I can go by step-by-step process. They say, okay, as per the framework control 1, you must have an asset management. Now in this case, what is a subcategory? Like physical device and system within the organizations are inventoried. Software platforms and applications within the organizations are inventoried. Organization communications and data flows are mapped. External information systems are cataloged. Resources are prioritized based on the classification, criticality, and business value. And cybersecurity roles and responsibility for entire workforce and third party established. Now they have a specific controls for that in detail. So for that, we can refer this standard. So standard was introduced to measure the effectiveness. So this is how we can basically adopt any framework. I can basically scope as per my business requirement, by which I can eliminate the need for implementing this entire framework and tailor it as per my business choice. So this is what we called as a information security framework or cybersecurity framework. Now coming back, so in domain 5, the first part we talk about audit the information security management framework. So you can adopt any kind of a benchmark, which is an approved benchmark from the organization, and based on that you can assess. See, when we're talking about any governance, policy is the foundation for any governance. What is governance? Like in order to manage kids at home, that is your governance, right? Manage country, run countries operation, that is a governance. So governance is an important part of the organization, and policy is the foundation of governance. If I say policy is the management statement. Policy is the management intent. Anything they want to enforce in the organization, they create a policy for that. Example, like every system must be protected with the password. So it's a policy. Password must be 8 character, now we introduce as a standard. Standard is a tool by which we enforce the policy. And how to create step-by-step 8-character password, that is a written procedure. Procedure always in detail in nature. So policy is strategic in nature, standard is tactical in nature, and procedure is basically operational in nature. We create a detailed procedure so which is easy for people to understand. Now next thing is called as a security awareness and training. Now let me explain the thin line difference between the awareness, training and education. Awareness is a short term. I was in an impression that 8-character password is a secure password. So I was using a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. But when I attended any awareness workshop which modify my behavior, and now I get to know 8 characters should not be only numeric. Okay, so I start using alpha, numeric and special. So with that, something modify my behavior. The question is that how to measure the effectiveness of the awareness training? By reviewing the number of people participated in the awareness program? No. As an auditor, I can able to evaluate the effectiveness of awareness training is by seeing the number of incidents reported. Let's take an example. Last week, we have conducted the awareness workshop, and that time we had 70 incidents was reported. And this week 140 incidents has been reported. It means people are now more aware about the incidents. So always remember the way in order to measure the effectiveness of awareness training is increase in the incident reports and decrease in a security violation. So awareness modify the behavior, training modify the skill, and education modify your career. Like doing a CISA training, CIRIS training, CSAM training is a part of a training which modify your skills. But annually you are attending any college program that is called as an education. Another important thing that you must be familiar with that, which is called as a data ownership. Data ownership. So data ownership is another important thing we have that you must be aware about. In data ownership, like data owner is the one who ultimately accountable for the data. So whenever you're classifying any data, you basically speak to the data owner only. Okay, because data owner is in the best position to tell you the value of the data. The next important thing is called as a, can we transfer the data ownership? No, you can't transfer the data ownership. Okay. So we, on behalf of data owner who manages the data, is a data custodian, because he is responsible for storing and safeguarding a data. Okay, like system analyst, computer operator, database operator, they are the one who are the data custodian. Let's take an example. I am the business owner. I produce one data. I bring more data in the organization. Now I have a IAM team. I have a database team who manage the data on behalf of me. I will say, hey Eric, please maintain my data. So here the Eric will maintain the protection of a data, but he will follow all my guidelines, and according to that only he protect the data. I will clearly tell him, see, this data is basically based on EU customers, so make sure you should protect effectively. So here I am a data owner who instruct him that this is the EU data. If something goes wrong, he going to question me, and it is difficult for me to answer. So here the database administrator, based on my guidance, going to protect the data. So data owner one is the one who value the data, and data custodian manage the data on behalf of data owner. Now third is basically called as a security administrator. Security administrator is another important position we have. He is responsible for providing adequate physical and logical security for the information system, and also providing a security to the data and equipments. So his role is more like a implementer kind of thing. Example, firewall administrator, okay, VAPT guys, control implementer. These are basically called as a security administrators. Then we have a new IT users, the one who basically join the organization. Make sure they should read and agree to the security policies. Keep login IDs and password secret. Create the quality password. Lock all the terminals for the IT users. Next is we have a data users. Data user example, like the IT users who creating a data, it is accessed by the data user only. Like I have a team who create a data. Okay. Now you are basically the one who review this data. So you are the data user. So the responsibility regarding a security and to be vigilant regarding the monitoring of the unauthorized people in the work areas, and comply with the general security guideline and policies. Okay, so data users include the external and internal user communities. Next, we have a documented authorization. So data access should be identified and authorized in a writing. So as an IS auditor, you should review a sample of the authorization to determine if the proper level of written authority was provided. Example, I am an auditor, I am going for an audit. As per the audit, for this kind of a permissions, we need an approval from the senior management. So we'll ask for the sample of an email which can confirm that you're authorized to access the document. And the similar pattern you can get in a CISA exam also. Like you are an auditor, you have discovered that some access has been attempted to access specific files. Now, how to verify? What is the next step? The next step is we will request for those exceptions. We request for the email exchange which say that, okay, you're authorized to access that particular documents. Next important thing we called as the terminated employee access. See, whenever any employee leave the organization, we don't delete his account. We disable the account. The first step is notify all the department, and the second step is revoke his access. But the question talking about what is the best action that we have to take against the terminated employee, the thing is that revoke his access. Termination is two types, voluntary and involuntary. Voluntary termination when employee resign, and involuntary termination when company say asked to leave. But during this process, during a termination process, IS auditor need to review that any terminated employee is having access to the system, and that is also one of the biggest concern. If terminated employee already left the organization and he still has access to the organization, then it's a biggest concern. So from an exam point of view, remember this is one of the biggest concern we have. Whenever we implementing any kind of a control, security baseline we have to follow. What is baseline? Baseline is a minimum level of security that we need to follow in the system. Let me explain you with the reference. Now I want a baseline for my organization. Okay. So I want a baseline in, example, like I want a baseline for my system. So for my systems, baseline mean minimum security. I want a baseline like password. I want a baseline antivirus, and I want a baseline called as a security solution. Okay. So this is basically the baseline 1, baseline 2, baseline 3. So example, we have a system 1, system 2 and system 3. So in a system 1, password we require, that's the minimum thing we need in the organization, in the system. Now question is password is required. I agree. Now here I can refer a standard. Okay. Can we go for the 8 character? Yes. And then we decide the procedure. So if you notice, I started with the baseline of the system. Like I want a password. It's a minimum. I need a password in any system. I want antivirus and I want further system security. Now with the reference of password, I decided I will use 8 character as a minimum password in the system. And then I will create a detailed procedure how to do that. So baseline come with the standard and procedure, policy come with the standard and procedure. So you must be familiar with the security baseline, and whenever you conducting an audit, you can adopt the baseline, and as per that, you can able to conduct the audit in the organization. And any kind of a deviation you identified from what is agreed and what is there, you can document that as a find. So what is the best practice we follow? So standard for security may be defined at a generic level, then for a specific machines or for a specific application system. So let's move to the next part. Next section is a very important section in domain 5, privacy. First of all, let me explain you the difference between the privacy and secrecy. Privacy deal with the individual, and secrecy deal with the organization. That's why in the organization you have seen the top secret and all that. See, when the law was introduced, to protect the interest of the people. Now in different business sector, we have different industries. Example, in India, we have a food, we have a insurance, we have a bank. Okay, now if you want to start any kind of a insurance business, I need to comply with the IRDA. So what is this? This is the agency, this is the regulation authority. And similar thing, if I want to start any kind of a food services, I need to be comply with the FSSAI. So regulation authorities are basically introduced in every country to control a respective industries and to make sure that business should be comply under the law parameter. Compliance is nothing, it is all about act of abiding. So privacy is the utmost priority in every organization because it's directly mapped with the individual. So privacy is significant aspect for the IS auditor also, especially in the light of the global regulations such as GDPR. GDPR basically is a national privacy regulation of EU, but US does not have a national privacy regulation. They have a industry specific. Example, they have a, for the health sector, they have a HIPAA. For the finance, they have a GLBA. Okay, so this kind of regulations we have. So to understand what is the level of privacy we need in the organization or what is the level of privacy control we need in the systems, we perform the PIA, privacy impact assessment, and based on that we implement the privacy management system in the organization. So what is a good practice? So if I say my organization need to be comply with GDPR, example, so I need to comply with the GDPR. So what I need to do first is I need to create a policy. So by the policy, I can comply my people, process and technology to be with the GDPR. How? See, I cannot go to each and every individual and process and technology and explain about the GDPR articles. So what we did, we include the GDPR information. So we translate the GDPR information as an intent in the policies. And then I enforce a policy in the organization. So where people, process, technology need to be comply. So by comply with the privacy, you automatically comply with the GDPR. So this is how you can able to bring the privacy best practices uniformity in the organization. That's why we say policy is the best tool to be compliance with any regulatory requirement. And that is where senior management intentions comes in the policy only. So privacy has some good practices that must be we follow, like private data should be collected fairly in an open, transparent manner. So if I say this organization is following the effective privacy practice or they have a good privacy practice, how to check that is they collect the data fairly, open, transparent manner. Example, you visit one website which say how they're going to use the data. They're going to explain about how they are basically managing data. So that shows their privacy best practice. And private data or privacy data should be kept securely throughout the life cycle from the creation phase till the destruction. And the third most important thing is that your private data should be accurate, it should be complete, and it should be up to date. Okay, so to best meet this challenge, management should perform the PIA and IS auditor can ask for the last review report. This is how as an auditor can able to validate as the company is compliant with any privacy practices. With the continuation of the previous series, so this is the second part of the domain 5, and in this section we're going to discuss about physical access and environmental control. Physical access environment control is another important topic we have in the domain 5, and it is a bit difficult for the people who are from a non-IT background. So as an IS auditor, you need to evaluate these controls. And in many organizations, these controls are designed and implemented by the facility management, not by the information security manager or IT. One example I can give you about the physical access and environmental control is HVAC system, heat, ventilation, air conditioning. You have seen the AC in your facilities. It is control from a system. We have a AC in the data center also, cooling system in the data center, which is used to maintain the optimum temperature, by which we can able to maintain the performance of the hardware, because excessive heating of the hardware will impact the performance. So what controls we required? Okay, that we need to understand here. As an auditor, I will first obtain the approved list of controls, and then I will assess the existing control based on that particular parameter, and any kind of a gap we identify, we will document that as a finding. So in this, when you're talking about the general controls, we have a 3 type of controls. One is called as a managerial control. It is also called as an administrative control. Then we have a technical, then we have a physical control. Managerial control is more like a direction, more like a order. Example, like post-COVID, the company has announced that you have to join office from January, and everyone must come with their vaccination certificate. So this is a kind of an order which is used to control the behavior of the people. Now people know that, okay, we need to have that COVID vaccination certificate, then only we can able to come to the facility. So it is like a control to monitor and improve the behavior of the people. One more example of an administrative control is, without vaccination certificate, no one is enter into the office. No one's supposed to enter into the office. So it's a company announcement. So it is more like a managerial control. Second, we have a technical control. The technical control is something which is technical in nature. Example, firewall. Now, it's not something you pick every packet and inspect. No, right? So there is a tool involved in which we have created a rules, and based on the rule, the tool will capture and block the packet. So there is a technical control. Their function is involved to block or detect the attacks. Then we have a physical control. Physical control is like a physical lock, okay, placement of a security guard which try to block physically. So we have a 3 type of controls. See, when you're talking about controls, control may be proactive, which mean they can attempt to prevent an incident, and it can be reactive, which allow the detection, containment and recovery from an incident. So proactive control are called as a safeguard, and reactive control are called as a countermeasures. Sorry. Okay, so that is basically called as a countermeasure. So we have 2 type of controls. Example, like before going, protect from COVID and all that, we have vaccinations. So that is basically called as a proactive control. But if vaccination become ineffective, you got impacted with the COVID, the reactive control is isolate yourself from the family, and then you can go for the 14 days period of containment. So this is how we have a proactive and reactive. So next point is called as a control monitoring and effectiveness. Just implementing a control will not achieve the defined objectives. We need to check whether control is working effectively. It is same like we just hire the security guard and now we trust that guard that he's going to block everyone. No. We also see how effectively he is responding to all the threats and everything. Same like when we configure the firewall and simply creating a rules in the firewall, it doesn't meet my objectives. On a regular basis, we need to test the firewalls by sending a malform packets and see whether it can able to detect and block. So as a controller designed, implemented and operated, IS auditor should ensure the logs are enabled, because that is how you can able to track the effectiveness of the controls. Okay, so and we also need to ensure, as an auditor, we need to ensure they are testing on a regular basis. Okay, and their procedure should be developed by which they can able to test effectively. And as an IS auditor should also ensure they should have a capability to monitor the controls and support the monitoring system in the control design. Next thing is called as a environmental exposures. See, environmental exposures are due primarily to the naturally occurring events such as lightning storms, earthquake, volcanic eruptions, hurricanes, and extreme weather conditions. So one particular area of concern is also, which is coming from an environmental exposure, is called as the damage of equipments. Right now I'm doing this training, suddenly there is a power issue and it directly impact my hardware, and because of that my system get shut down, or it get restart, or it can damage. So as an auditor, the biggest concern for us is the damaging of an equipments, because if the equipment is damaged, then it directly impact the availability. We have a different kind of a threats associated with the hardware equipment, like total failure, voltage reduce, spike, surge. So that's why we purchase one system which is called as a PCS, power conditioning system. In your home we called as a stabilizer, which is used to stable the power supply. Along with that, we must require UPS and generator to prevent all the uninterrupted interruptions. So these kind of controls you can basically introduce to prevent this environmental exposures. The next important thing is called as a physical access exposures and control from the auditing perspective. We also buy alarm control panels. So we also buy alarm control panels, which is separated from a burglars or security system, which is located on the premises. We also go for the smoke detectors. Okay, we have a smoke detector. It's give the early warning of the smoke. So this is the smoke detector we have. If there is a smoke in the room, it get alert and notify the concerned person. Okay. So the detector should produce the audible alarm. When activated, it should be linked to the monitoring system, but make sure this monitoring should be separate from the fire department. We also need a visual verifications of the presence of water and smoke detectors in the computer rooms. I'm sure you have seen the buckets in a red color, right? We also need a hand pull fire alarms that should be placed strategically throughout the facilities, and it should be placed in such a manner that it should give the visibility. That's an important thing. And that also that fire extinguisher should be tagged for inspection and inspected at least annually. So as an auditor, if you want to audit extinguishers and all that, you can check the last review period. If it's basically exceed by more than 1 year, then you can raise that as a finding in your report. But before that, confirm why it got late, why there is a delay. But one more important thing, as a auditor, testing fire suppression system is also expensive. The fire suppression system itself is expensive to test, and therefore as an IS auditor, they need to limit their test to review the documentations to ensure system has been inspected and tested within the last year. We also have a different kind of a controls, like we need a biometric, something you are, okay, we can place, because that provide the appropriate type of accountability in the data center. Because in data center, if you just access the data center based on an ID card and all that, tomorrow you can deny it was not you who accessed the data center. You can tell him that, okay, I misplaced my card and everything. So might be in my absence, someone has used the card and accessed the data center. So data center need to prefer the strongest accountability, and that is why we need a biometric in the data center. But when you're talking about the biometric is vulnerable for the two errors. One is called as a FAR and one is called as a FRR. False acceptance rate, where false user accepted by the machine. Example, I'm not authorized user, but machine has accepted me as an authorized. It has happened sometime when I try to mimic someone's voice, they assume it is actually authorized user and give me access. That is called as a false acceptance rate, which is the biggest concern for an auditor. And false rejection rate, where the authorized user falsely rejected by the machine. Example like I came back from the office and I was wearing gloves and all that. My hands are completely dry and all that. So when I'm trying to place my fingers or thumb on the scanner, it is failed to recognize. So this is basically because of FRR. So the point where FAR and FRR basically intersect, that is the best optimum point. Okay. So that is the most important thing we need to consider. Another important point that we need to understand is security guards. Security guards are very useful if supplemental by the video cameras and lock doors. So guards should be supplied by an external agency that should be bonded to protect the organization from all kind of losses. We don't hire the in-house security guards because this is how frauds are possible. So we outsource as third-party agencies which hire them, and this is how we separate the job activities. So let's move to the next part. The next section is called as the identity and access management. See, we have IEEE, identification, authentication, and authorization. Identification, authentication, and authorization. Suppose I went to airport. And I say, hey, my name is Prabh and I'm traveling from Trivandrum to Delhi. So they will check my name in the list. Yes, they confirm my name in the list, but they also need to confirm, is it the same Prabh who claimed to be? So I will show my Aadhaar card, I will show my PAN card. Okay, that basically prove, yes, I am Prabh itself. So that is called as an authentication, the person who claimed to be. And based on that, they give me the access to a specific seat, that is called as an authorization. Under the authorization, we also use the access control. So we have a different type of access control, but in CISA, they talk about two type of access control. One is called as a mandatory and one is called DAC. What is DAC? DAC stand for discretionary, which is also called as a distribution. You know, before marriage, my life, my rule. Same like which is called as a distributed access control. What is the meaning of that is, suppose this is the system we have, system A. Okay, so we have a user 1, we have a user 2, and we have a user 3. User 1 log into the system and he create a folder, but he deny user 2 and user 3. User 2 log into the folder, user log into the system and he create a folder, he deny user 1 and user 3. User 3 log into the system, he create a folder and he deny other 2. So same like, your work group environment, when you log into your laptop or desktop, you create a folder, you deny your family member. One of your family member has access that particular system and they create their folder, they deny others. So this is called as a discretionary distributed access control, where the multiple parties are involved in giving and authorizing access. But when you're talking about the mandatory, it's a default system access used in a military and all that. The best example is in your Windows. If you really want to modify the CMD or you want to access any application, you need to run as an administrator. That is a mandatory thing. So it's an access control which is default embedded in the system. And that is called as a centralized access control, which is also called as an NDAC. So MAC is a system-based access. They have a predefined logics. In CMD, if you want to perform some admin command, you need to run as a CMD. In the Linux, if you want to perform any kind of an admin activity, you need to run sudo command. It is a mandatory access control. So when you're talking about authentication, authentication basically has a 3 factors. Something you know, which is your password, which is easy to compromise. Something you have, which is called as a ownership, and something you are, which is a biometric, and somewhere you are nowadays. So token device and one-time password is something you have, which is called as a ownership. Next is called as a single sign-on. Single sign-on means you log in once and access the multiple resources. Prabh, any example? Imagine like when you're talking about single sign-on, one example we have about Gmail. So you open the gmail.com, you log into the Gmail, and from there you open doc.google.com. It doesn't ask for the password. Then you type YouTube, it doesn't ask for the password. Then you type any document, it doesn't ask for the password. When you open Drive, it doesn't ask for the password. So that is the best example of single sign-on. You need to authenticate once, and based on that, you can able to access n number of services of a Gmail. But single sign-on is a concept we use within a one domain. But federation, I'm sorry for the spelling. In hurry, I'm sorry, I can correct that. So federation is basically where you authenticate with one domain and access the other domain. So federation we use between the two companies, between the two domain. Example like we have a booking.com. And we have a Gmail. I'm sure you have noticed user went to booking.com. Now booking.com giving him option, log in with your Google ID or sign up. Definitely to save time, I will select login with the Gmail ID. So booking.com redirect user to the Gmail. To the Gmail, I will basically provide my username and password, and against that Gmail provide the authorization ticket. And that authentication ticket or authorization ticket I will provide to booking, which confirm yes, you are the authorized user of Gmail. And based on that, booking.com provide the resource. So in this case, Gmail is the identity provider who verify your identity, and booking.com is a service provider who provide you services. So federation is basically used across the multiple systems. Biometric establish the strongest form of accountability, which cannot be spoofed. So we have two scanners. One is called Retina, and we have a second is called as a Iris. Iris is so when you're talking about retina scan the blood vessel of your eyes. Okay, very accurate but difficult to implement because it has a acceptance issues. Whereas the iris is accurate with acceptance. If you ask me which was more accurate, retina is more accurate because it's difficult to spoof someone's blood vessels. But iris is a second best accept and accurate. When we're going for the biometric solutions, as an auditor, we also need to check their privacy policy because implementing a biometric system in the organization requires the user acceptance. Okay, so acceptance for the solution is very less in the organization. So we need to review the data privacy policies and see how they're going to use the biometric data. So let me explain you how the biometric enrollment works. So whenever you register for biometric, suppose this is the scanner we have. Suppose this is the scanner we have. So you place your fingers or you place your thumb on the scanner. Scanner will capture the image and stored in a form of minutes. Minutes we call, or minutes or minutes we call. Or you can say in a form of template. It's stored in a form of template. So next time when you place finger, it basically scan and generate that template and compare again the stored template. If it match, it give access. So this is, they do like a one-to-many or many-to-many identification. Next important thing, audit login. It's very important to log everything, by which we can able to track the accountability. So audit logging is another important practice we need to follow. The next solution, we have a DLP, data leak prevention. Ultimate objective of DLP is to ensure data should not leave in an unauthorized manner. You know, you have seen a lot of employees use their confidential data and they try to send on their public portals. So we need to prevent this data exfiltration. Data exfiltration definition means data should not leave the organization environment. So we have a NDLP here, we have a NDLP here. So example, I connect the pen drive and trying to copy the data. That is also data leaving in an unauthorized manner, but DLP there which tried to block. You opening a Gmail and try to upload data on a Gmail. So there was an endpoint DLP or network-based DLP. We try to block the content. So ultimate goal of a DLP is to prevent the data exfiltration. It is not a solution introduced to monitor what is coming from outside to inside. No, it is a solution which monitor what is leaving the organization data, what is leaving the organization control, because internal threat is a difficult threat. It's a concern for the organization. Okay. And it is the biggest threat for the organization. Okay, the next thing we have network and endpoint security, most important section of domain 5. Now we have a different type of circuits. Okay, what is circuit? Circuit is a link by which we transfer the data. So when you're talking about circuit, the first circuit, they're talking about dedicated circuit. So we have a user A and we have a user B. Okay, same like, you know, the circuit is a link which is basically up between the two party, and you send the data through this link. Okay, another example is you call your friend. Okay, so what you have to do, you need to dial his number, and once you dial his number, the link will be established and then you communicate, and once it is done, you basically discard. But that is a circuit, but that is not a dedicated. It is a temporary circuit. But dedicated circuit is link is always up. Whenever you dial, it will be available. Second is called as a switch circuit. Switch circuit, I give you the example of the switch circuit is you dial the person number, you temporarily establish the connection, you're done and you finish. You're done with that, you can discard the things. So that is the difference between the dedicated and switch circuit. We also have a packet switching technology. Packet switching technology today is used in a 4G. I'm sure you have seen the Jio, Airtel and all that offer the packet switching technology only. That is why if you do the WhatsApp call, it has a better quality than the voice call, because packet switching was primarily introduced for the data transfer. Let's take an example. We have a system A, we have a system B. So this is my internet. We have a routers here. So what packet switching does, we have a data here, data divided into packets. So some packets goes through this route and some packet goes through this route. And by end of the day, it get delivered to the B. It doesn't give assurance in what state it basically received, but they just send the data. That is why the packet switching is primarily designed for the data transfer, not for the voice transfer. That's why if you're in your 4G phone, you can see the VOLTE. Okay. And your landline, it's not having a dial-up tones. It has some other tones. Okay, so today your all calls is basically done through VoIP by using a packet switching only. You also need to understand the different type of networks, like LAN, which is basically a group of computers within the organization, a group of system over the internet that is called as a WAN, and access the storage is called as a SAN. DNS is a service which translate name to IP and IP to name. Let's take an example of the smartphone. It is difficult for you to remember your friend's number. So what you did, you saved the friend's number with the name. because human mind remember alphabets over the numbers. So if I want to call my friend Pankaj, so I will type Pankaj Delhi. So it will see by name and it map with the number. So automatically dial the number. Same like you open a browser, type google.com. They send the request to a specific server which translate the name to IP, and then it will redirect you to the particular web server like this way. So we client and we have a DNS server here. And this is my web server. So client has requested google.com. That request goes to DNS. DNS say no boss, google.com on 1.1.1.1. And this is how it redirect to 1.1.1, and then web server provide the content. So DNS is a service which translate name to IP and IP to name. The next thing is called as a DHCP. DHCP is a service which basically provide the automated IP address to all the systems. It is difficult to manage the IPs in every system. So what I want a one centralized server from where I need to assign the IP address to all the clients. The next important topic is called as a topology. Topology is provide the layout of the network. Okay, and then we have a media type. So we have a twisted pair and fiber optic. Twisted pair are twisted together by which it reduces the attenuation. What is attenuation? Is loss of signal. Fiber optic is basically providing a very effective speed, and it is having a low latency and better than twisted pair to send the sensitive data. So this is the first part of this particular series. I'm planning to make another series next week, and we'll see what can be done. This is just a first part of the domain 5. If you find this video useful, do share your feedback and do let me know what are the other videos should I make on the CISA. Thank you.